Setting up a test endpoint. In this module, we'll set up a test endpoint using Python and Flask. We will create a file with a hello world in it, set up some API actions, and then use POSTMan to test it out. First off, I'd like to give a shout out to Miguel Grinberg for all the work he's done in setting this up. I learned a lot from his website and his tutorials. Here's a link to his page describing how to get a RESTful API set up with Python and Flask. Next, we want to create a file called app.py and make it look like this. Now in the first line, we have our reference to the Python executable. Then we create an app object in Flask and pass the name of the script in. Next, we define a route. A route is the entry point for the script, usually sent in the form of a URL. So if you have /customers, it will direct you to the customers area. If it's /help, it will show you help data, etc. In our case, we just have a slash, meaning it's just the endpoint URL. And just like a web page has an index.html, we will define an index here to show what it needs to do if someone requests the URL with just the slash. And in this case, we're going to return the string hello world. Next, we have an if statement that says if the name is main, which it is, then the app runs. This code ensures our script will run in a continuous loop. So let's go ahead and save it and run it. Now one thing we'll need to do is set it to executable. To do that, we'll type in chmod a+x app.py. And now let's run the file. As you can see, it's running on our local host. It's started and the debugger is active. So what we'll need to do is create another SSH session to communicate with this. Now, as you can see, I have another SSH window open. And in this SSH window, we have the service running. So what we'll do is use curl to call back into the server and see if we can get that hello world message. To do that, we'll type in curl 127001:5000. That means we're connecting to our local host in port 5000. And as you can see, we have the hello world string returned. So now we know Flask is installed properly and we know we can set it up to use it as an API endpoint. And now we're going to change that file a little bit and add some actions. And now let's take a closer look at our app.py. Now you'll notice we're importing Flask and we're also importing JSONify. That's so we can use JSON objects in our application. And if you look here, we've created a JSON object named tasks. Now let's take a closer look at our application that we've just created here. Now you'll notice that we're importing Flask, but we're also importing JSONify. That's so we can use JSON objects in our scripts. And as you can see, I've created a JSON object called tasks. It has an ID, title, description, and a done. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this in our API. Now, if you look at my route, it looks a little different now. It says /todo/API/v10/tasks. This is the URL that you're going to have to input in order to get to this action. And we've specified the methods that can be used on this action, which in this case is get. Now, if you send a get command to this task, it'll send back the getTasks function, which returns a JSONify tasks. So what that does is it takes that task object, turns it into JSON, and returns it out anytime you call the API that's set in that route. And that's what we're going to test out. And if you notice at the bottom where it says app.run host equals 000, the reason I've done that is so that we can access this from the outside. Before, the only way we could access it is if we were on the local server, but now we can access it from the internet. So let's go ahead and save this file and test it out. As you can see, we have it running on our local host, and we'll open up POSTMan and test it out. We could use curl for everything, but POSTMan gives you the same variety of options, yet it's much easier and faster to use. Plus, it's a little more organized. You can get it at www.getpostman.com, and it's a free Chrome application. Okay, now I have POSTMan open, so what I'll do is go ahead and put in that URL. Now, if you'll notice, I used internetofthings.jeremymorgan.com for this. Your URL, of course, will be different. But if you look towards the end, we have the /to-do/API/v10/tasks that we specified in our route. And let's go ahead and send a GET command. And as you can see, it instantly responds and it sends back that JSON request that we created earlier. This is the exact JSON object that's in the script right now. So if we dynamically modify this in any way, this is what will be returned whenever we send a GET request to that route that we've specified. And that's really all there is to it. In the next module, we're going to hook this up to MariaDB and we're going to make it an actual dynamic application. In this module, we created a file with a hello world in it. We set up some API actions, and then we used POSTMan to test it out with an API call. Flask is extremely powerful, and it's all you need to get your API up and running fast. As you'll see in the next modules, we'll set up a fully functioning API with very little coding, and it'll be backed by a database.